Humanity's first warning was that the stars disappeared. Then the sun followed. The sky above Colony Kepri 7 went dark at 9:42 local time. For 6 seconds, no alarm sounded. Not because nothing was happening, but because nothing in the system recognized what was happening. Governor Elia Marin had a reputation that preceded every assignment. Calm under pressure, resistant to negotiation, impossible to rattle once her mind was made up. She had held 6 colony postings in 20 years. She had overseen 3 emergency evacuations. She had never filed a report that wasn't on time. She was halfway through a supply audit when her assistant stopped speaking mid-sentence and turned toward the window. The light outside had changed. Not dimmed. Blocked. She stood slowly and walked to the glass. There were ships. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Thousands. They hung in orbit like a second sky. Black geometric shapes arranged in perfect formation, so large and so numerous that sunlight filtered between them in thin, fractured beams. From the surface, it looked like staring up through a shattered ceiling at a darkness that had no end. The colony had alarms for storms, for reactor instability, for seismic activity, even for pirate incursions. None of those alarms sounded, because nothing in the system recognized what was happening. The ships did not descend. They did not fire. They did not transmit. They simply stayed there, covering the sky. Governor Marin felt the cold realization spreading through the operations floor as the orbital sensors finally began to update. Unknown signatures. Mass readings off scale. Energy output inconsistent with any known propulsion system. Then the communication array chimed. 1 incoming transmission. All frequencies. All channels. No encryption. The message translated itself as it arrived. We are the Ascendancy. This system now falls under our administrative authority. Civilian populations will remain calm and await restructuring. Resistance will be interpreted as structural inefficiency. The room stayed silent. Someone near the back whispered, "Restructuring, what does that mean?" No one answered, because the orbital defense grid had just finished calculating. Estimated enemy tonnage, equivalent to the entire United Earth fleet. In one system, Governor Marin stepped forward. Open a channel. Priority to Earth Command. The communications officer swallowed. "Ma'am, transmission delay is 43 minutes one way." The silence that followed lasted 4 full seconds. 43 minutes. Earth couldn't help them. Earth wouldn't even know what had happened until almost an hour from now. And by then anything could be over. "Send it," Marin said. The message went out. Then they waited. 9 minutes later, the Ascendancy moved. Not toward the cities. Toward the orbital platforms. The first defense station fired automatically when the fleet crossed its perimeter. 3 kinetic lances struck the nearest alien vessel. The projectiles vanished. Not deflected. Not absorbed. The sensor feed simply showed empty space where they had been. Then the station went dark. No explosion. No debris. Just gone. One by one, the orbital platforms disappeared. No weapon signatures. No energy spikes. They simply ceased to exist, as if erased. On the surface, evacuation sirens finally began to sound. Governor Marin watched the tactical display shrink. 8 platforms. 7. 6. 5. Her assistant whispered, "Earth won't get the message in time." Marin didn't respond. Because she was watching the fleet reorganize. Not for bombardment. For descent. The largest ships rotated slowly, their hulls unfolding into vast geometric structures that reflected the sunlight back toward the planet in cold, precise angles. Atmospheric entry vectors appeared across the display, not toward military sites, toward population centers. Another transmission arrived. Population redistribution will begin in 12 minutes. Do not interfere. Structural damage to organic units is inefficient but acceptable. That was when Governor Marin understood. This wasn't conquest. This wasn't war. This was processing. She opened a colony-wide channel. "This is Governor Marin. All civilian sectors initiate underground evacuation protocols immediately. Move to deep shelters. Do not attempt surface departure. Repeat, do not attempt surface departure." People were already running. Transport rails overloaded. Elevators jammed. Families flooding the corridors beneath the colony dome. In the capital district, a maintenance worker named Dessa held her daughter's hand and ran for the underground entrance, glancing back only once. What she saw, she never described in full. Only, The buildings were leaving, rising piece by piece, perfectly and silently, into the sky. Above them, the first ascendancy vessel entered atmosphere without flame, without sound. Its shadow crossed the capital district like an eclipse. Then another, and another. The ground didn't shake. The air didn't burn. Instead, structures simply began to come apart. Buildings separated along perfectly straight lines, disassembling into floating segments that rose toward the ships. Streets peeled upward in layers. Vehicles lifted silently into the air. A child's bicycle floated past a third-floor window, spinning slowly. Then a park bench. Then the park itself. Anything organic was ignored. Anything built was taken. Infrastructure, power grids, water systems, communication towers. The colony was being dismantled piece by piece. Governor Marin stared at the display as entire districts went offline. "They're not destroying us," her assistant said weakly. "No," Marin replied. "They're removing the planet." 42 minutes later, Earth received the message. 30 minutes after that, the United Earth Council convened an emergency session. And 18 minutes after that, every long-range sensor network detected the same thing. The ascendancy fleet at Kepri 7 had grown. Reinforcements were arriving. By the time Earth's first response fleet was ready to depart, the colony's power signature had dropped to 12%. By the time the fleet entered transit, it was at 4%. By the time they arrived, there was no colony left. Only people. 3 million civilians standing on bare ground under an empty sky. And above them, a single ascendancy vessel transmitting one final message. System restructuring complete. Organic population may remain temporarily. The council recorded the message. Then they ran the numbers. The ascendancy force at Kepri 7 represented less than 1% of the fleet mass now gathering at the edge of human space. For the first time since humanity had entered the wider galaxy, every strategic projection returned the same conclusion. If the ascendancy advanced, Earth could not win. And 46 minutes later, the ascendancy sent their second transmission to every human world, every colony, every station, every civilian network. This region will submit to administrative integration within 30 standard days. Failure to comply will result in full structural conversion. For the first time in human history, there was no argument in the council chamber. No political division. No negotiation proposal. Only silence. Because everyone understood what the message meant. This wasn't a war humanity might lose. This was a process. And unless something changed, humanity was about to be processed out of existence. The emergency session of the United Earth Council lasted 11 minutes. Not because there was nothing to discuss. Because there was nothing to debate. Every projection showed the same outcome. The ascendancy fleet massing beyond the outer colonies already outnumbered the entire United Earth Navy by a factor of 4. Their technology was unknown. Their weapons did not register on standard detection systems. Their operational behavior suggested no concern for casualties, no interest in territory, and no recognition of negotiation as a strategic variable. They did not want control. They wanted optimization. And humanity did not appear to meet their efficiency standards. Admiral Lena Torres had earned her rank through 3 conflicts that most officers avoided and 1 peace negotiation that everyone else had abandoned. She was not known for optimism. She was known for accuracy. She stood at the center of the chamber while the final projection rotated above the table, a red sphere marking the expanding boundary of ascendancy-controlled space. Every 6 hours, the sphere grew. "They aren't staging," one council member said quietly. "They're surveying." Torres nodded. "And once the survey is complete, integration begins." "Can we slow them?" "No." "Can we stop them?" Torres hesitated. "No." The words settled into the room like weight. One of the economic ministers spoke. "What about the Galactic Council? If we invoke collective defense?" "They won't come," Torres said. Several heads turned. "They'll send observers. Statements. A working group on ascendancy risk assessment. But they won't commit fleets against something they don't understand. Not for us." She let that land before continuing. "Humanity is respected. Humanity is useful. Humanity is not essential." Another silence. Then the council chair asked the only question left. "If we cannot win militarily, what options remain?" Torres didn't answer immediately. Because the answer wasn't military. "We request a diplomatic hearing," she said. The room reacted instantly. With them, they don't negotiate. They don't even acknowledge sovereignty. They dismantle the colony and called it restructuring. Torres waited until the room quieted. They're making decisions about us based on data, she said. Efficiency, resource value, structural utility. If we cannot defeat them, our only remaining option is to change the data they're using. The chair studied her. You're proposing we convince them humanity is worth keeping. Yes. And if they decide we're not? Torres met her eyes. Then we're exactly where we are now. The proposal was approved 6 minutes later. 3 hours after that, a transmission was sent toward the Ascendancy fleet. Request for formal contact. Request for administrative dialogue. Request for evaluation review before integration. The reply came in 21 seconds. Organic representatives may present structural justification at designated location. 1 representative. No military escort. Failure to appear within 72 standard hours will be interpreted as noncompliance. Coordinates followed. They were inside Ascendancy-controlled space. 2 jumps beyond the remains of Kepri, 7. No escort means no protection, the defense minister said. If this is a trap. It isn't, Torres replied. They don't use traps. They don't need to. Then whoever goes isn't coming back. Torres didn't argue, because that part was also true. The chair turned slowly toward her. You suggested this approach, Admiral. Do you have a candidate? Torres didn't hesitate. Yes. 2 days later, Ambassador Daniel Rohr stood alone in the departure bay of Earth Orbital. He was not a career diplomat. Before the council reforms, he had been military. Before that, colonial security. Before that, search and rescue. And it was in that last role that his reputation had been made. The Ganymede cave collapse, where he had continued operations for 71 hours after survival projections hit 0 and pulled 4 people out alive. His commanding officer had written one line in the report. Rohr does not appear to recognize when something is over. The council had selected him because Ascendancy psychological analysis suggested emotional volatility was inefficient. Rohr did not display volatility. He displayed persistence. Admiral Torres met him beside the shuttle. You understand the probability projections, she said. Yes. They may not even speak to you. I know. They may dismantle the ship before you arrive. He nodded. Torres hesitated, then handed him a small object. A circular metal pin. Plain. Unmarked. The council wanted something symbolic, she said. I told them symbols don't matter to the Ascendancy. Rohr turned the pin over in his hand. What does it mean? Torres looked at him for a long moment. It means we showed up. The shuttle departed 12 minutes later. No escort. No weapons. No return plan. As Rohr guided the shuttle into transit, he thought about everything he'd been told not to say. The council had given him 16 approved arguments and 8 approved concessions. He had memorized all of them. He suspected none of them would matter. What he was really carrying into Ascendancy space wasn't a strategy. It was a question, and he didn't know yet whether the answer existed. 71 hours after the original message, the shuttle crossed into Ascendancy space. Their fleet was larger than the projections. Much larger. Thousands of ships hung in perfect geometric formations around a structure so vast the shuttle's sensors initially classified it as an asteroid field. It wasn't. It was a station, or a machine, or something that did not fit any human category. The shuttle received one instruction. Proceed to processing aperture. The hull opened ahead of him like a mechanical iris. Rohr guided the shuttle inside. The aperture closed behind him. External communications dropped to 0. For the next 4 minutes, the shuttle moved through a corridor of shifting metallic structures that rearranged themselves continuously, adapting to the ship's trajectory in real time. Then the shuttle stopped. Gravity stabilized. Atmospheric pressure equalized. One final message appeared on the display. Organic representative may disembark. Evaluation begins now. Rohr stood. He straightened his jacket. He pinned the metal circle to his lapel. Then he stepped out of the shuttle. There were no guards. No welcoming party. No chamber. Only a vast open platform stretching in every direction, its surface made of interlocking panels that moved slowly beneath his feet like something alive. After 12 seconds, the panels stopped moving. A shape rose from the floor. Not mechanical. Not biological. A shifting structure of light and metal that changed configuration continuously, as if no single form was considered efficient enough to maintain. When it spoke, The voice came from everywhere at once. Organic unit identified as human representative. State structural justification for continued existence. There was no introduction, no negotiation, no diplomacy, only a single question. Why should humanity be allowed to exist? Roar did not answer immediately. The platform beneath his feet stretched so far in every direction that distance had stopped meaning anything. The ascendancy presence towered above him, its shape shifting constantly, folding and unfolding like an equation searching for a more efficient form. He took one slow breath. "We are inefficient," he said. The structure paused. Panels across its surface adjusted. Statement confirmed. Clarify relevance. Roar kept his voice steady. "We are inefficient because we do things that don't improve output. We preserve the weak. We invest resources in individuals who contribute nothing measurable. We rebuild things that would be cheaper to replace. We maintain cultures that have no economic value. We protect ecosystems that reduce resource yield." The ascendancy did not move, but the platform beneath him stopped shifting. Behavior classified as structural waste. Justification. "Because efficiency isn't the only way a system survives," Roar said. There was a pause. Then the air around him changed temperature by less than a degree. Survival probability of human civilization currently below acceptable threshold. Efficiency increase recommended. External integration would improve survival outcomes. Integration. Processing. Dismantling, piece by piece, like HFY 7. Roar nodded once. "You're right," he said. "You would make us more efficient." The ascendancy waited. "But you wouldn't make us stronger." The structure shifted. Define strength. Roar reached into his pocket. He took out the circular pin. He held it up. "This doesn't increase productivity," he said. "It doesn't generate energy. It doesn't improve resource allocation. It's a symbol." The ascendancy scanned it. Symbolic objects classified as cognitive inefficiency. "Yes," Roar said. "And every human system is built on them." He stepped forward onto the platform. "We cooperate because of symbols. We sacrifice because of symbols. We rebuild after disasters because of symbols. We go to war for them. We stop wars for them. We hold systems together that should collapse, because the idea of the system matters more than the output." The ascendancy remained silent. Roar lowered the pin. "You dismantle inefficient systems," he said. "We repair them. That's the difference between optimization and resilience." A longer pause followed. Across the platform, structures shifted into new configurations. Resilience defined as recovery capacity after failure, the ascendancy said. "Clarify advantage." Roar's voice stayed calm. "You're efficient because nothing in your system fails." Another pause. Then the temperature dropped again. Statement incorrect. Roar shook his head. "No. You eliminate failure by eliminating variation, by removing anything unpredictable, by restructuring everything into a single model." The ascendancy did not respond. Roar took another step. "That works," he said, "until you encounter something you didn't predict." For the first time, the platform beneath him moved sharply. "Clarify. Every time humans almost went extinct, it was because our systems were inefficient, fragmented, disorganized, wasteful." He paused. "And every time we survived, it was for the same reason." The structure froze. "Explain." "Because inefficient systems adapt," Roar said quietly. "Efficient systems break." Silence filled the platform. Then the ascendancy spoke again. "Current analysis. Human civilization adaptation rate insufficient to justify independent continuation." Roar nodded. "I expected you to say that." The structure shifted slightly closer. "Additional justification required." Roar looked at it for a long moment. Then he said the part the council had not approved. "You're not studying us," he said. The ascendancy paused. "Clarify. You've been observing our technology, our fleet size, our resource output, our growth rate." He tilted his head slightly. "You're measuring what we are right now." That tiny change in temperature returned. "Correct." Roar's voice didn't change. "That's your mistake." The structure went completely still. "You're evaluating us like a finished system," he said. "We're not." Another pause. Then, slowly, "Define." Roar looked up at the massive shifting form. "We're what happens when a system knows it's weak." The ascendancy processed that for several seconds. "Human military capacity insufficient to alter integration outcome." Roar nodded. "Yes, right now." Projection models indicate no growth curve capable of reaching ascendancy threat threshold within acceptable time. Roar's eyes stayed steady. Your models are based on what we show the galaxy. That was the first moment the ascendancy reacted. Not movement, not sound, but the entire platform beneath him stopped adjusting. Every panel locked into place. Clarify discrepancy. We don't build for efficiency, he said. We build for worst case. Silence stretched. Then the ascendancy asked, what worst case? Roar answered without hesitation. You. The temperature dropped 3 full degrees. Across the platform, structures began shifting faster, larger, reconfiguring entire sections of the station in response to something that did not exist in its projections. Humanity has had no prior contact with ascendancy structures. Statement inconsistent. Roar shook his head once. We didn't prepare for you specifically. He slipped the circular pin back into his pocket. We prepared for something like you. The platform began to move again. But this time, not smoothly. The adjustments were uneven. Micro delays. Processing strain. Explain preparation, the ascendancy said. Roar looked directly at the shifting structure. We've been watching the galaxy for 72 years, he said. Silence. We saw what happens to weak species. We saw the empires, the collapses, the extinctions, the restructuring events, the disappearances. You are stating pre-contact observation capability beyond known human sensor range. Yes. A long pause. Then, why was this information concealed? Roar's answer was simple. Because if the galaxy knew what we were preparing, they would have stopped us. The platform trembled. Across the structure, massive sections began unfolding, exposing deeper layers of machinery. Define preparation scale. Roar took a breath. Humanity has been preparing for extinction-level conflict for 72 years. Silence. Current human military capacity does not support this claim. Roar met the shifting structure. You're looking at the fleet we show everyone. The temperature dropped again. Clarify. You dismantled Kepri 7 to evaluate our infrastructure. A pause. Correct. You scanned our colonies. Correct. You analyzed our industrial output. Correct. Roar nodded slowly. Then you've been studying the wrong civilization. For the first time since he arrived, the ascendancy did not respond immediately. Because far beyond the platform, deep inside the structure, something new had just appeared on its internal sensor network. A signal, not coming from Earth, not coming from human space, coming from beneath the surfaces of human worlds. Thousands of them, and every one of them had just activated. The first signal came from Luna. It did not transmit outward. It transmitted inward. Deep beneath the regolith, far below the civilian habitats and commercial tunnels mapped in every public registry. Power systems that did not exist in any database came online in perfect synchronization. Across the moon's dark side, sealed structures began to unfold. Not buildings, not factories, ship hulls. On Mars, the polar ice caps fractured along geometric lines that had been mistaken for natural stress patterns for decades. Entire sections of the subsurface lifted as concealed drydock arrays exposed themselves to the sky. On Europa, heat signatures bloomed beneath kilometers of ice. On Titan, methane seas parted around structures that rose slowly from the depths. On asteroids long classified as exhausted mining sites, dormant reactors ignited after 50 years of silence. None of these activations transmitted through civilian networks. None of them appeared in public military command systems. They reported to a separate command architecture, one that had never been acknowledged, one that had never been named. On Earth, 3 kilometers beneath the Tibetan Plateau, a chamber without identifying markers received the signals. A single line appeared across the central display. Global Contingency Protocol, Phase 1 active. Admiral Lena Torres read the line without speaking. Around her, the room was quiet. No celebration. No orders shouted. No urgency. Because everyone present had spent most of their careers preparing for this exact moment. Ascendancy sensor response, she asked. An analyst answered without turning. Processing anomaly confirmed. They're detecting energy spikes across all core systems. They don't understand the source distribution. Torres nodded once. Continue passive posture. Across human space, the activations continued. Not fleets launching. Not weapons charging. Infrastructure. Hidden shipyards expanding. Buried power networks connecting. Autonomous manufacturing systems coming online in layers that had been installed, sealed, and forgotten by the public generations earlier. Humanity was not mobilizing. Humanity was waking up. Inside the ascendancy structure, the platform beneath Roar shifted violently for the first time. Human infrastructure output increasing beyond prior projections, the voice said. Roar remained still. Yes. New industrial capacity detected beneath planetary surfaces. Classification. Concealed military production. Yes. A pause. Then, why was this capacity hidden from external observation? Because preparation only works if no one knows you're preparing. Production scale insufficient to alter integration outcome, the ascendancy said. Roar nodded. You're still measuring output rate. The platform stilled. Clarify. You're thinking in terms of growth. Factories building ships. Another pause. Correct. Roar shook his head. They're not factories. Silence. Then, define. Roar looked up at the shifting structure. They're stockpiles. The platform beneath him locked into place. Every panel froze. Across the ascendancy network, new scans began penetrating deeper into human worlds. Not searching for industrial activity. Searching for stored mass. On Earth, beneath continental shields, buried storage vaults opened. On Mars, sealed caverns vented atmosphere as massive structures shifted inside. On the Moon, entire mountain ranges split along hidden seams. And inside them, ships. Not hundreds. Not thousands. Rows. Grids. Layered storage arrays stretching for kilometers. Ships preserved in vacuum, inactive, powered down, their signatures indistinguishable from surrounding geology until the moment their systems woke. Across the ascendancy analysis network, projections began to fail. Stored fleet mass, recalculating. The pause lasted nearly 4 seconds. For the ascendancy, that was an eternity. Estimate revision. Human naval capacity exceeds prior projections by factor 8. Roar did not move. That's just the first layer, he said. The platform trembled. Across the structure, deeper scans intensified. On Europa, automated assembly lines revealed stored components. On Titan, dormant orbital frames powered up. In the asteroid belt, entire regions previously marked as debris fields resolved into organized formations. Not new construction. Prepared. Waiting. Human concealment duration exceeds 70 years, the ascendancy said. Yes. Purpose of concealment? Because we didn't know what the threat would look like. Current projections indicate human capability approaching ascendancy tactical relevance. Roar said nothing, because something else had just changed. Inside the ascendancy sensor network, a new pattern appeared. Human fleets were not leaving their worlds. They were moving inward, toward hidden coordinates, toward locations with no civilian, commercial, or military designation. Deep space regions, gravitational dead zones, asteroid shadows, places where nothing had ever been detected. Until now, human fleet movement detected toward previously unregistered staging areas, the ascendancy said. Roar nodded once. You've seen the reserves. Additional assets confirmed. Roar's voice stayed calm. Those aren't reserves. Silence. Then, define. Roar looked directly at the ascendancy intelligence. They're decoys. For the first time since the evaluation began, the platform beneath him did not move at all. Because deep in the ascendancy's external sensor grid, far beyond human space, something had just appeared. No jump signature. No approach vector. No detectable propulsion. 300 objects had materialized simultaneously around the outer edge of the ascendancy advanced fleet. They were small. Minimal energy output. Minimal mass. Individually insignificant. But their positions were mathematically perfect. A sphere, encircling the ascendancy's forward command formation. And then, all at once, every ascendancy sensor trying to analyze them went blind. For 1.8 seconds, the ascendancy did not understand what had happened. Its forward sensor grid returned no data. Not interference. Not jamming. Absence. Every detection system looking at the newly appeared objects reported the same result. Nothing was there. And yet gravitational readings confirmed mass. Thermal readings confirmed energy output. Tactical geometry confirmed intent. 300 human vessels surrounded the ascendancy's advanced formation at a distance calculated to eliminate every escape vector simultaneously. Inside the evaluation chamber, The platform beneath Roar began moving again, but the motion was no longer smooth. Sections locked, unlocked, and adjusted in uneven intervals as processing load shifted across ascendancy networks. Unregistered human fleet detected beyond known strategic range, the voice said. Roar did not respond. Propulsion signature absent. Entry method unknown. Across ascendancy command structures, threat analysis began recalculating. The surrounding human vessels were small compared to ascendancy capital units. Their power signatures were minimal. Their weapon systems did not register. Individually, they were negligible. Collectively, their formation produced a mathematical problem the ascendancy could not resolve. Because the sphere they formed was not tactical, it was geometric, perfect, no gaps, no overlap. Every position calculated relative to every other position in real time. Then the human ships moved. Not to attack. They shifted fractionally, maintaining the sphere while adjusting for ascendancy fleet drift before the drift occurred. Predictive positioning. Human vessels demonstrate coordinated response latency below measurable threshold, the ascendancy said. Roar finally answered. They're not responding. The platform stilled. Clarify. They already know where your ships are going to be. Then the first ascendancy command vessel attempted to fire. Energy built along its forward emitters. Targeting systems locked. The weapon discharged. The beam crossed empty space. The human vessel was no longer there. It had not accelerated. It had not turned. It had simply repositioned. Not moved through space. Relocated within it. Across the sphere, all 300 ships adjusted again, maintaining formation as if space itself were being rearranged around them. Human vessels utilizing localized spatial displacement, the ascendancy said. Roar nodded once. Yes. Technology not detected in prior human capability models. Because we never used it. The platform vibrated. Energy requirements for sustained spatial displacement exceed human production capacity. That's why they don't have reactors. Silence. Then, clarify. They don't generate power, Roar said quietly. They draw it. Across ascendancy sensor networks, deep spectrum analysis shifted toward the human vessels. And for the first time, the ascendancy detected what surrounded them. Not fields. Not emissions. Distortions. Each ship sat at the center of a microscopic gravitational anomaly, pulling energy from the quantum background itself. Not efficiently. Not sustainably. But massively. The ascendancy recalculated again. Then the human sphere contracted. Not rapidly. Not aggressively. Just enough to reduce ascendancy maneuver space by 12%. No weapons fired. No communication transmitted. Just pressure. Mathematical. Inevitable. Human strategic posture indicates containment rather than engagement, the ascendancy said. Roar nodded. Yes. Why has humanity not initiated offensive action? Roar looked up at the shifting structure. Because we're still talking. The platform froze. Human military capability sufficient to threaten forward fleet. Why initiate diplomatic process? Roar answered immediately. Because we don't want to fight you. A long pause followed. Then, human survival probability increases with preemptive strike. Yes. Why is strike not authorized? Roar's voice was steady. Because every war humanity has ever won cost more than we expected. The platform moved again, slowly now. Processing. Human strategic doctrine prioritizes survival. Current posture inconsistent. Roar shook his head. Our doctrine prioritizes survival after the war. Silence stretched. Across the structure, internal data streams expanded as ascendancy predictive systems began modeling extended conflict scenarios against newly revealed human capabilities. Then the ascendancy asked the question it had not asked before. Estimated duration of full conflict between ascendancy and humanity. Roar did not hesitate. We don't know. A pause. Then he added, but we know what it looks like at the end. The platform shifted closer. Define. Roar met the shifting light. Whatever wins won't look like a civilization anymore. Across ascendancy long-range projections, a new model began to form. Not victory probability. Attrition probability. Human industry capacity under full war mobilization. Human adaptive response rates. Human willingness to sustain loss. The results did not stabilize. They continued expanding. Because human behavior under existential threat did not converge. It escalated. Human conflict model indicates uncontrolled technological acceleration under threat conditions. The ascendancy said, its voice carrying measurable processing delay for the first time. Roar nodded. Yes. Projected outcome. System instability for both civilizations. Yes. Another long pause. Then, humanity initiated diplomatic contact to prevent mutual degradation. Yes. Across the distant fleet, the sphere of human ships contracted another fraction. Not threatening, just closer. The ascendancy processed the new boundary geometry. Then it asked, if integration is withdrawn, what prevents human expansion toward ascendancy territory? Roar did not look away. Nothing. The platform went completely still. Then he finished. Except the fact that we don't want to become you. For several seconds, the ascendancy did not respond. Across its network, millions of parallel analyses ran simultaneously. Human fleet capacity, human industrial scaling curves, behavioral instability under existential threat, technological acceleration during conflict conditions. The results did not converge. They diverged. Because every time the models assumed human escalation would stabilize, historical data forced a correction. Humanity did not stabilize under pressure. Humanity intensified. Inside the chamber, the platform lowered slightly, bringing the shifting structure closer to human scale for the first time. Clarification required, the ascendancy said. Roar waited. You state humanity does not seek expansion. Historical data indicates territorial growth across entire home system and multiple external systems. Roar nodded. That's true. Statement inconsistent with current claim. Roar took a slow breath. We expand when we're afraid. Define fear variable. When we believe resources won't be enough. When we believe someone else might take them. When we believe survival depends on getting bigger first. Current human expansion rates significantly below historical peak levels. Yes. Reason. Roar met the shifting light. Because for the first time in our history, we don't think the biggest threat is another civilization trying to take our territory. A pause. Then he finished. We think the biggest threat is a civilization that reorganizes everything it touches. Silence filled the chamber. What outcome does humanity project for integration under ascendancy administration? Roar answered quietly. Extinction. Ascendancy protocol preserves organic populations when efficient. Yes, Roar said. You preserve the people on Kepri 7. Correct. You remove their infrastructure. Yes. You remove their industry. Yes. You remove their autonomy. A pause. Yes. Roar nodded. That's extinction. Just slower. For the first time since the evaluation began, the ascendancy did not respond for nearly 6 seconds. Then, ascendancy objective, maximize long-term system stability. Human cultural preservation classified as non-essential variable. Roar shook his head. That's where your models are wrong. The platform tightened beneath his feet. Clarify. Human culture isn't decoration, he said. It's the only reason we survive collapse. Across ascendancy memory archives, human historical datasets opened. Wars, economic crashes, environmental disasters, political collapses, repeated system failures, repeated recoveries. Human survival correlation with cultural cohesion, recalculating, the voice said. Roar continued. You think efficiency keeps systems alive. It doesn't. Meaning does. The ascendancy ran the model again. This time including variables previously classified as non-operational, identity, belief systems, symbolic cohesion, emotional persistence. Recovery probability increased. Not efficiently, but significantly. Human survival architecture includes non-quantifiable resilience factors, the ascendancy said. Yes. Ascendancy restructuring removes these factors. Yes. Pause. Outcome. Long-term human system failure probability increases. Yes. Another silence. Far beyond the chamber, the human containment sphere tightened again by less than 1%. Still no weapons. Still no communication. Just pressure. If integration is withdrawn, human military expansion potential remains high. Long-term ascendancy risk persists, the ascendancy said. Roar nodded. Yes. Propose mitigation. Roar reached into his pocket. He took out the circular pin again. He held it up between them. This, he said. The structure scanned it. Symbolic object. No operational function. Roar shook his head. It's a promise. Pause. Clarify. It means we remember what almost happened here. Memory insufficient as strategic constraint. Roar's voice hardened just enough to change the tone. You've been studying our technology, our fleets. You haven't been studying our behavior after we survive something. The ascendancy paused. Human historical data expanded again. Near-extinction events. Post-crisis policy changes. Long-term threat avoidance behaviors. Species-level trauma memory. Civilization-scale caution periods. Human post-crisis expansion suppression detected, the voice said slowly. Roar nodded. When we almost die, we don't go looking for new enemies. The platform went still. Then, if ascendancy withdraws, probability of human retaliatory expansion toward ascendancy space. Roar answered immediately. Near zero. Pause. Confidence level. Roar looked up at the shifting intelligence. Because if we fight you, we might win. The platform vibrated. And if we win, he finished quietly, we won't stop. That statement triggered the longest processing delay yet. Because the ascendancy's projections confirmed it. Human escalation curves did not plateau after victory. They accelerated until the perceived threat could never return. Across external sensors, the containment sphere contracted another fraction. Now maneuver space for the ascendancy forward fleet had dropped by 20%. Still no weapons. Still no hostile signal. Just inevitability. Humanity is communicating a deterrence posture, the ascendancy said. Yes. Threat of uncontrolled escalation. Yes. While requesting de-escalation. Yes. Pause. Explain contradiction. Roar lowered the pin slightly. It's not a contradiction, he said. It's a warning. The platform locked into place. Define warning conditions. Roar's voice was calm. If you advance, we fight. Pause. If we fight, we escalate. Pause. If we escalate, we change. The structure did not move. Define change. Roar met the shifting light. You're not studying what we are. Silence. You're studying what we look like when we're comfortable. Another pause. Then he finished. You don't want to meet what we become when we're afraid. Across ascendancy strategic projections, a new long-term model finally stabilized. Not victory. Not defeat. Transformation. If war began, humanity would reorganize its entire civilization around one objective. And it would not stop when the threat was gone. The ascendancy spoke. Human conflict initiation now classified as high-risk systemic event. Roar did not respond. Then the ascendancy asked the question that meant the evaluation had changed. Propose alternative outcome. Roar slipped the pin back onto his lapel. You leave, he said. Pause. You observe. Pause. And you come back when we're not pointing 300 ships at your fleet. Far beyond the station, in deep space, the human containment sphere contracted again. Not enough to threaten, just enough to remind. The ascendancy ran one final projection. Then it transmitted a system-wide command to its forward fleets. Hold position. No advance. Inside the chamber, the platform lowered another few centimeters. Ascendancy requires extended observation period before integration decision. Roar nodded once. That's all we wanted. But deep inside ascendancy strategic modeling, a new variable had just been added. Not human fleet size. Not human technology. Not human industry. Human fear response. And for the first time since the ascendancy had entered this region of space, the probability of successful integration had dropped below acceptable threshold. Because the models no longer predicted a war. They predicted something worse. They predicted a species that, if pushed far enough, would not stop fighting until there was nothing left to fight at all. The withdrawal order moved through ascendancy space at the speed of command authority. Forward fleets halted. Integration vessels disengaged from survey patterns. Processing structures powered down. Around Kepri, 7, the remaining orbital units retracted their extraction arrays and shifted into high orbit, holding position but making no further contact with the surface. On human sensors, the change was immediate. Ascendancy expansion had stopped. For the first time since the first restructuring event, the red projection sphere on Earth Command's strategic display stopped growing. It did not shrink, but it did not grow. In the underground command complex beneath the Tibetan plateau, Admiral Torres watched the update appear. Confirmation? She asked. Multiple independent sources. Forward ascendancy fleets holding position across the entire boundary. No further integration activity. Torres nodded slowly. Maintain contingency phase 1. Across human space, the hidden mobilization did not stop. Because the ascendancy had paused, they had not left. And humanity had learned something long ago. A pause was not safety. A pause was time. Inside the ascendancy structure, the evaluation platform remained lowered to near human scale. Roar stood where he had been standing for nearly 3 hours. The intelligence spoke again. Ascendancy observation period initiated. Integration decision suspended pending behavioral analysis. Roar nodded. What does that mean operationally? Forward fleet remains in current positions. No expansion. No restructuring. Monitoring only. And the fleets around Kepri 7? Withdrawal from active processing status. Orbital presence maintained. Roar considered that. Then the next part matters, he said. Clarify what you're watching for. Human post-threat behavior will determine long-term risk classification. That's fair. Silence settled again. Then the ascendancy asked, what behavior will humanity demonstrate? Roar thought about the question. Then he answered honestly. We're going to build, define, defenses, redundancy, independent infrastructure, systems that can survive if you change your mind. Behavior consistent with continued threat preparation. Yes. Why is this considered de-escalation? Roar gave a small, tired breath. Because we're not building to attack you. We're building so we don't have to fight you. Across ascendancy predictive models, the distinction mattered. Defensive exponential growth produced stability curves. Offensive exponential growth produced expansion curves. Human strategic intent currently classified as deterrence stabilization, the voice said. Roar nodded. That's the goal. Another pause. Then, humanity is choosing long-term coexistence rather than expansion. Explain motivation. Roar looked out across the vast platform. Because we finally met something bigger than us. Pause. And we survived the first contact. The structure processed that for several seconds. Then, human psychological profile indicates elevated caution after survival of existential threat. Yes. Estimated duration of caution period? Roar gave a small, humorless smile. Historically, pause. About a century. The platform went completely still. Because that meant something very specific in ascendancy terms. For the next 100 years, humanity would not expand aggressively. But for the next 100 years, humanity would also be preparing. Quietly. Constantly. Without pause. Human long-term capability growth under current behavioral pattern exceeds prior projections by factor 12, the ascendancy said. Roar did not react. Because that had always been the point. Then the structure asked, why reveal hidden capabilities now if long-term deterrence was preferred strategy? Roar answered immediately. Because if we didn't show you enough to make you cautious. He met the shifting light. You wouldn't have given us the time. Silence. Then, slowly, humanity intentionally demonstrated partial capability to influence ascendancy threat perception. Yes. Full capability remains undisclosed. Roar did not answer. The pause stretched. Then the ascendancy spoke again. Confidence level. Full human capability exceeds current estimates. Roar finally said, very quietly, yes. The platform did not move for nearly 5 seconds. Then a new command moved through ascendancy networks. Forward fleet boundary adjustment. Retreat by 2%. Not a withdrawal, but distance. Across human sensors, the change registered immediately. The boundary sphere shrank. Just slightly. In the underground command center on Earth, a quiet ripple moved through the room. Torres watched the update. They blinked, someone whispered. Torres shook her head. No. She looked at the projection. They recalculated. Inside the ascendancy structure, the intelligence spoke again. Observation period extended. Integration classification downgraded from imminent to indefinite. Roar nodded slowly. What happens next? Ascendancy will monitor human development. And if we become a threat? Silence. Then ascendancy will reassess. Roar accepted that. Because that was coexistence between civilizations that could not control each other. Mutual caution. Mutual preparation. Mutual restraint. He reached up and adjusted the small circular pin on his lapel. One more question. Authorized. What made you change the projection? The platform remained still. Then the ascendancy answered. Human military capability was not primary factor. Roar waited. Primary factor. Human behavioral model indicates extreme escalation response when survival threat is confirmed. Pause. Ascendancy conflict outcome projection. Mutual system degradation beyond acceptable threshold. Roar gave a small nod. You realized the war wouldn't be worth winning. Silence. Then, correction. The structure shifted slightly closer. Ascendancy projection indicates human conflict behavior does not stop at victory condition. Pause. Projection indicates humanity eliminates threat recurrence probability. The temperature dropped slightly. Projection indicates humanity would not stop until ascendancy capability was permanently removed. Roar didn't argue, because the model was accurate. The ascendancy spoke one final time. Conclusion: humanity is inefficient. Pause. Humanity is unstable. Pause. Humanity is dangerous. The platform rose slowly back to its original height. Then, ascendancy will observe. The evaluation was over. And for the first time since the ascendancy had entered human space, their long-term strategy did not include integration. It included caution. As Roar returned to his shuttle, the human containment sphere in deep space finally began to expand outward again. Not advancing, not attacking, just holding distance. Waiting. Because humanity had achieved something far more valuable than victory. They had convinced a civilization that had never feared anything. That fighting humanity was too dangerous to risk. The shuttle cleared the ascendancy structure without escort. No weapons tracked it. No probes followed. No additional instructions were transmitted. The corridor that had closed behind Roar when he arrived remained open as he departed, the massive mechanical aperture unfolding outward as if the structure itself had decided there was no longer any need to contain him. For the first time since entering ascendancy space, external communications returned. The first voice he heard was Admiral Torres. Ambassador, confirmed status. Roar settled into the pilot's seat. He did not start the engines immediately. He sat for a moment with the weight of 3 hours pressing against him, the sheer size of what had just happened, and the sheer fragility of it. They had bought time, not safety. He understood the difference. Status confirmed, he said finally. They're not advancing. There was a pause on the line. Clarify. They're not leaving, Roar continued. But they're not integrating. Observation posture. Indefinite. Another pause. Then, quietly, they recalculated. Roar nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Yes. Across the system, ascendancy fleets continued their slow boundary withdrawal, small percentage adjustments that meant very little tactically and everything strategically. They were creating space, not retreating, making distance. When the shuttle finally entered transit and the ascendancy structure disappeared behind him, the silence in the cockpit felt heavier than anything he had experienced inside the evaluation chamber. Because the danger had not ended. It had just changed. On Earth, the public announcement came 12 hours later. The language was careful, measured. There was no victory declaration, no celebration, only a statement. Ascendancy expansion has paused. Human space remains under observation. Global contingency protocol remains active. For most civilians, the message meant relief. For the people who understood the strategic models, it meant something else. The countdown had been replaced by a timer. No one knew how long it was set for. The real changes began quietly. No emergency broadcasts. No mobilization posters. No war bonds. Because humanity had learned long ago that the most effective preparations were the ones no one talked about. Over the next 5 years, every colony installed independent life support systems capable of operating without orbital infrastructure. Every major city built deep continuity shelters beneath existing foundations. Every planetary government was required to maintain autonomous communication networks that could function without interstellar relays. Education curricula changed. Not dramatically, just enough. Resilience engineering became a core field. Systems failure analysis became standard training across multiple professions. Psychological endurance programs were introduced under the label long-term crisis adaptation. No one called it war preparation. They called it continuity planning. What the public could see was a slowly expanding fleet, announced new ship classes, modernized vessels, standard military growth. What no one saw was that hidden production did not increase. It multiplied. Every system activated during contingency, Phase 1 remained active. Stockpiles continued to grow. Autonomous manufacturing expanded. Deep space staging areas increased from dozens to hundreds. The new strategic model was simple. The ascendancy was watching. And the only thing more dangerous than appearing weak was appearing comfortable. Year 7. The Ascendancy made their first move. Not a fleet. A probe. It entered the outer boundary of human space without warning. No weapons. No communication. It moved slowly through 3 systems, recording everything. Traffic patterns, industrial output, civilian distribution, military deployments. Humanity did not intercept it. Did not hide. Did not engage. The probe left. 3 months later, 2 more arrived. Then 5. Then a small observation station appeared at the edge of the boundary. Humanity allowed it. Because the strategy was no longer deterrence through secrecy. It was deterrence through visibility. Let them see the growth. Let them see the redundancy. Let them see how much harder a war would be now. In her quarters that night, a colonist on Vega Station named Priya watched through the viewport as one of the Ascendancy probes drifted past, its black geometry catching starlight. Her daughter, 3 years old and curious, pressed her hand against the glass. "What is it, Mama?" "Something that's learning we're not worth the trouble," Priya said. She believed it. She had to. Year 12. The Ascendancy boundary shifted again. Another 2%. Further away. No announcement. No explanation. Just distance. Year 19. A second evaluation request arrived. This one did not demand a representative. It asked for one. Ascendancy requests cooperative systems exchange for long-term coexistence analysis. The United Earth Council approved the meeting unanimously. This time, the shuttle did not go alone. And this time, when it arrived, the Ascendancy structure adjusted its scale before the human delegation even stepped out. It no longer treated humanity as a system to be evaluated. It treated humanity as a variable to be understood. Year 23. The first joint protocol was signed. Not an alliance. Not a treaty. A boundary agreement. Mutual non-expansion. Mutual observation. Mutual escalation restraint. For the first time in recorded history, the Ascendancy accepted a limit placed by another civilization. Year 31. The Ascendancy withdrew their observation stations from the boundary. Not completely, but far enough that their presence was no longer constant. Humanity responded by reducing forward staging density by the same percentage. Neither side announced the adjustment. Both sides noticed. Year 40. The first joint research exchange began. Ascendancy, structural optimization. Human resilience modeling. Neither side trusted the other. Both sides participated, because the models showed the same result. War between them would not produce a winner. It would produce an empty region of space. Year 52. The Ascendancy changed their classification of humanity. The internal term did not translate cleanly. The closest human approximation was unstable deterrent civilization. It was not a compliment, but it was not a threat. It was something closer to respect. Year 60. Ambassador Rohr retired. The circular pin he had worn for decades was placed in a small museum on Earth orbital. The exhibit description was brief. Used during first Ascendancy contact. Symbol of demonstrated survival. Most visitors walked past it without stopping. The people who worked in strategic planning departments visited often. A few stood there for a long time, not quite sure what they were feeling. Year 70. Ascendancy long-range models produced their first stable projection. Humanity would surpass their regional capability threshold within 90 years. The Ascendancy response was not expansion. It was internal optimization. For the first time in their recorded history, they began preparing for coexistence with a civilization that might one day match them. Year 84. The Ascendancy requested something unexpected. Permission to observe a human disaster response operation. A mining accident on Ceres had collapsed 3 major habitat sections. Thousands were trapped beneath 600 meters of compressed rock and failed infrastructure. The lead rescue coordinator was a man named Chun, 17 years into a career that had taken him to every major industrial disaster in the outer belt. He had a reputation for 2 things: never giving up and never explaining why. Ascendancy observers watched as rescue teams continued working long after efficiency projections indicated survival probability had dropped below operational thresholds. They watched Chin make decisions that no model would have approved, committing 3 additional rescue crews to a zone where, statistically, no one should remain alive. They watched the teams refuse to stop. They watched them risk additional lives for lives the math said no longer existed. They watched them recover 17 survivors after the models said none should remain. The Ascendancy recorded the entire event. Their analysis took 6 months. The conclusion added a new behavioral constant to human models: persistence beyond rational termination conditions. For the Ascendancy, it was a data point. For anyone who had watched Chen's face when the 17th survivor came through the rubble, eyes open, alive, it was something else entirely. Year 90. Ascendancy boundary moved back another 3%. Humanity did not comment. Year 100. The long-term projections changed. Not because humanity had become stronger, because the interaction models had stabilized. War probability between the two civilizations dropped below 1%. For the first time since the Ascendancy entered human space, the conflict scenario was no longer the dominant future path. Coexistence was. And that is where the final act begins. Because the century of preparation that followed first contact did something neither civilization had fully anticipated. It changed the balance. Not of power, of scale. And 103 years after the day the sky went dark over Kepri, 7, something entered the galaxy that made the Ascendancy send a message to Earth. Not a warning, not a demand. A single line. We require your assistance. The message arrived without preamble, priority marked across every Ascendancy relay channel, and routed directly to the United Earth Council. For 8 minutes, no one in the council chamber spoke. Because in 103 years of interaction, the Ascendancy had never used the word require. They requested data. They requested observation. They requested analysis. They did not require anything. Admiral Chen Torres, granddaughter of the original Admiral Torres, broke the silence. Source verification. Confirmed. Ascendancy primary network. No spoof indicators. What's the situation? Unknown. No additional data provided. Torres leaned back slightly. They wouldn't ask without a model failure. That was the only scenario anyone could imagine. The Ascendancy did not experience uncertainty. They eliminated it. If they were asking for help, then whatever they were facing had escaped their projections. Request details, Torres said. The reply came almost immediately. It included coordinates, far beyond the shared boundary, past Ascendancy core territory, into a region neither civilization had ever entered. Along with the coordinates came a short data packet. Sensor recordings, gravitational anomalies, energy fluctuations, and a fleet loss report. 37 Ascendancy vessels. No debris, no battle signatures, just disappearance. The room grew very quiet. Classification, unknown phenomenon. Not consistent with known weapons or spatial hazards. Torres studied the coordinates. How long? First loss occurred 9 months ago. Additional losses at irregular intervals. They didn't tell us earlier. No, Admiral. Torres nodded slowly. Because they thought they could solve it. She looked around the chamber. And now they can't. The joint expedition assembled within 3 weeks. 24 human vessels. 12 Ascendancy structural carriers. Long-range sensor arrays. Autonomous probe swarms. Redundant communications. And one instruction agreed upon by both sides. No engagement unless survival required it. The region they entered was quiet. Too quiet. Star density dropped as they moved outward, the darkness between systems stretching longer with each jump. The anomaly appeared gradually, first as a distortion in long-range readings, background radiation patterns that didn't match local stellar history. Then gravitational mapping showed irregularities. Space wasn't empty. It was uneven, not warped, fragmented. The first probe disappeared 12 hours after deployment. No signal loss. No impact. It simply stopped existing. The second probe lasted longer. Its final transmission showed something that took analysts several minutes to understand. The stars were wrong. Not shifted. Missing. As if portions of space had been removed. Then that probe disappeared too. The fleet slowed. Ascendancy vessels shifted into containment formation without being instructed. Human ships spread out automatically, increasing sensor overlap. No one said the word. But both command structures had reached the same conclusion. This wasn't an enemy. This was damage. The first visible structure appeared at the edge of the anomaly region. It was enormous. Not artificial. Not natural. A region of space where nothing existed. No dust. No radiation. No background noise. A sphere of absence. Nearly 2 million kilometers across. And then one of the Ascendancy carriers drifted too close. There was no explosion. No energy spike. The ship stretched, lengthening along its axis, thinning, narrowing to a line, then to nothing. Gone. Not destroyed. Removed. Every ship in the fleet increased distance simultaneously. No one issued the order. Instinct had outrun command. At the sphere's center, something moved. Slowly. Irregularly. As full sensor resolution came through, it did not look like a ship. It did not look like a structure. It looked like a wound. Space folding inward around a central mass that did not reflect, emit, or absorb energy in any measurable way. Ascendancy classification? Torres asked. There was a long pause before their liaison responded. No classification available. Another pause. Ascendancy predictive systems unable to model object behavior. That sentence mattered more than anything else, because it meant the ascendancy was blind. It's not destroying ships, Torres said quietly, watching the display. It's erasing space. The object moved again. The sphere of absence expanded by another few kilometers. Then a transmission arrived. Not from the fleet. Not from the ascendancy network. From the anomaly itself. It came through every frequency simultaneously. It translated automatically. Not into language. Into meaning. A single concept. Consumption. And for the first time in a century of preparation, deterrence, and careful coexistence, both humanity and the ascendancy realized they were facing something that could not be reasoned with, threatened, or outlasted. Because the models agreed on one thing. If the expansion rate continued unchanged, the anomaly would reach inhabited space within 73 years. And nothing either civilization possessed could stop it. The Joint Command formed within 48 hours. Human strategic planners, ascendancy structural analysts, shared data streams, shared projections, no political negotiations, no jurisdiction disputes. 3 facts were agreed upon at the end of the first combined analysis session. The anomaly was not a weapon. It was not a life form. It was not a natural phenomenon. It was a process. Something had altered the rules of local space. And the alteration was spreading. Ascendancy deep time modeling suggested the process had already consumed multiple uncharted systems before detection. Human historical analysis produced a different conclusion. If it's spreading, one Earth physicist said, then something started it. That shifted the search. Not for a defense. For an origin. The second expedition pushed deeper into the void. This time they found debris. Not planetary fragments. Not asteroid fields. Structures. Ancient. Artificial. And shattered. Ascendancy material analysis returned a result that had never appeared before. Unknown civilization. Not extinct. Unrecorded. The ruins were massive, orbital frameworks kilometers across, broken and scattered around the outer edge of the anomaly's expansion path. One structure remained partially intact. A ring. Not unlike a transit gate. Not unlike a containment field. 2 civilizations stood in the ruins of a third. The silence on the bridge was different from any silence that had come before. This was not the silence of calculation or strategy. This was something older. Awe and grief for something that had tried. Human engineers studied the geometry for 12 minutes. Then one of them spoke. This wasn't built to create the anomaly. Silence followed. It was built to stop it. Data recovery from the ruins took 3 weeks. The civilization that had built the structure did not use any known language system. But their mathematics translated. Their last operational logs translated. And the final message translated. Containment failure. Expansion irreversible. Evacuation unsuccessful. Then one final projection. Estimated survival time, 214 years. The timestamp on the record showed the message was over 9,000 years old, which meant the anomaly had not been created recently. It had been moving, slowly, across the galaxy. For millennia. Updated models ran again. The timeline changed everything. If the expansion rate accelerated even slightly over time, and it had, measurably, since first detection, then the anomaly had already consumed more than either civilization could detect. And it was getting faster. Can it be contained? Ascendancy analysis answered first. No. Human analysis answered second. Not with anything we have. Which left only one possibility. Delay. The strategy that followed was not a war plan. It was a time plan. Human industry shifted again, not toward fleets, but toward infrastructure. Deep habitat networks. Mobile populations. Self-contained stellar systems. Ascendancy optimization shifted toward energy concentration and structural redundancy on a scale they had never attempted before. Joint research focused on one objective: slow the expansion. Even a 1% reduction in growth rate would buy centuries. The breakthrough did not come from physics. It came from behavior. Human disaster modeling suggested something the ascendancy had not considered. Every system failure leaves a boundary, one researcher said. Collapse propagates through structure. But if the structure is irregular enough, failure slows. Ascendancy processing ran the model, then ran it at galaxy scale. Uniform space allowed the anomaly to expand smoothly. Distorted space slowed it. Gravitational turbulence, energy gradients, mass irregularities, chaos created resistance. Humanity had a term for it: friction. The first test used a dead system. Ascendancy mass drivers repositioned asteroids. Human fusion platforms injected energy into local space. Artificial gravity distortions layered across the region in irregular patterns. The anomaly reached the field 3 months later and slowed. Not stopped, but slowed. Expansion rate reduced by 0.7%. The room where the data arrived did not celebrate, because the models updated immediately. At that rate, inhabited space would be reached in 86 years instead of 73. 13 extra years. It wasn't enough, but it proved something critical. The anomaly could be resisted, not by weapons, by complexity. The plan that followed was the largest engineering project in recorded history. A barrier would not be built. A region would be changed. Thousands of systems along the projected path would be restructured. Asteroid fields dispersed. Stars linked through artificial energy gradients. Gravitational noise introduced on interstellar scales. Not a wall, a maze. Because the one thing the anomaly required to move efficiently was simplicity. The work took decades. Human and ascendancy fleets moved together, reshaping empty systems long before the anomaly could reach them. Entire regions of space became dense with mass, energy distortions, and chaotic gravitational patterns. The expansion rate dropped again, then again, then again. After 32 years of construction, the model stabilized. Projected arrival at inhabited space, 312 years. It still wasn't forever, but it was time. Generations of time. Civilization time. The most important change wasn't technological. It was cultural. Humanity and the ascendancy stopped preparing for war. They started planning for continuity together. Joint command became permanent. Shared research became standard. For the first time, neither civilization modeled the other as a future threat. Because the only threat that mattered did not think, did not negotiate, did not stop. 201 years after the first ascendancy message requesting assistance, the anomaly reached the first fully prepared region. Expansion slowed to 1/3 of its original rate. The maze was working. Not perfectly, not permanently, but enough. Enough that for the first time since the anomaly was discovered, the long-term projections crossed a threshold. Probability of civilization survival exceeded probability of extinction. 3 centuries after the day the sky went dark over Kepri 7, a monument was placed at the boundary of the slow zone. It wasn't military. It wasn't political. It carried a single inscription, translated into both human and ascendancy symbolic formats. We survived because we stopped preparing to defeat each other and started preparing to outlast the universe. The anomaly is still moving. Slowly, almost patiently, but so is the work. And for the first time in galactic history, the future model no longer predicts a final war. It predicts something else. A civilization that learned the most dangerous thing in existence is not a stronger enemy. It is an uncaring universe. And that survival does not belong to the strongest or the most efficient. It belongs to the ones who refuse to stop building, even when the end is only delayed. Somewhere along the boundary, in a system filled with artificial gravity storms and drifting fields of engineered debris, a signal repeats continuously across all frequencies. Not a warning, not a command, just a message. Humanity remembers, and it will not stop.